Olha isso. No. E a mezzogiorno riesci a arrivare, né? Ce la vedi? E va giusto? E qui dona. Cambio. Proprio.
And
Mais c'est pas une info, j'entends pas des choses, j'entends rien. Bon.
So it might be a case of just slightly different paces, but we can see now she looks a little bit more content just to sit in there.
Yeah.
But we can see in the centre here, Filleries Kipsang at the front, Madalena Ferreira on the left, and on the very far left, that is Joyce Injiru, our overall series leader. We've got a big group together, more than I'd have expected at this stage, partly because it's flat running, but as we hit this first climb in about 400 meters, we will see this massive pack start to reduce down, and we'll get a sense of actually who's feeling like they've got legs to run fast today on proper trail.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this flat opening section because we get to see all the runners together. If you have one of the races where they go straight into a brutal climb, you know that the pack is going to split in the first minute and a half, 2 minutes. That's not happened today, so we get to see Naomi Lang, we get to see Injiru and Madalena Ferreira. I think we're going to see a lot of her today. She's got a special place in her heart for Nolly. This is where, you know, as she says herself, her result here 2 years ago changed her life.
Yeah, absolutely. She came here an unsponsored athlete, and we'd seen at Sierras and now that year that she had real talent. She led out that race, unfortunately blew up and finished, I think, down in 7th. But at the end of the season is when all the contracts are signed, and when she won this race and announced herself on the world stage, suddenly all of these sponsors came to her, and from that moment on she became a professional athlete, and she's never really looked back. She's changed her training, she's had the ability to really focus race to race rather than having to fit race around her own schedule. But with that opportunity has also come a lot of pressure, and that has been the real challenge for her since then, is that while she's able to train like a pro, she hasn't been able to deal with the expectations that victory has won. And today is possibly the first chance she'll actually be able to shake off the last 18 months of nerves, because she hasn't delivered since that race at that level.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm sure a lot of the viewers, thinking, well, if I'm not a full-time athlete, could I possibly compete on this tour? And we've already talked about Nemi Lang being a medical student. There are plenty of students, plenty of professional workers in the field today. But to optimise your chances, raising enough sponsorship so you can be professional and be a full-time athlete does make a massive, massive difference. But how much money do you need to be pulling in, David, to be able to survive on the tour?
Well, it's so dependent as well on how you spend your time, and because one of the big differences between being able to race and actually being a sponsored athlete is some of these athletes will come and they'll have several days to check the course, so they don't make silly mistakes by turning late, and they'll also have more of a chance to train and rest when they get here, because if you arrive 2 days before and you try and check out the course a day, 2 days before, you're actually then taking that energy out of your legs that you need to be saving up for the race itself. And so we're seeing some step changes in a lot of our athletes on the series, in that as the sport grows, more and more athletes are able to be sponsored. And we've seen already with Nemi Lang, after her performance in the finals last year, is now part of the Salomon international team, which means she gets far greater support with her travel, her expenses, but even things like physios and food while you're here, and making sure you're getting good provisions make a huge difference to reducing that pressure and being perfect race preparation to perform on the day.
Well, the first of the big climbs, and Filarisse looking very confident at the moment, but as with always in the hills, the field starting to spread out.
And you can see as well, there's a lot of single track here. So for quite a few of the first 3 loops, it can be quite hard for people to overtake. And so we've seen previously that on these climbs, getting ahead of the other runners can be quite tactical to ensure that you can just run at your own pace and you don't get frustrated. But the men's are starting 10 minutes behind the ladies, so we are expecting them to start in the next few minutes, and they will be finishing this race around 12 minutes ahead of the women, we think, overall. So we will see at some point over this course our men overtake the women, which is always fun to see how they interact. But we can see on the right-hand side now, we are behind, I think, our second and third place lady. Filarisse Kisang, I think, is ahead, and we have Nemi Lang ahead of Joyce Njiru at this stage. It looks like Filarisse has created enough space that we can't see her on the camera. She's really putting her foot to the floor at the moment. And we've just got to hope that Madeleine Ferreira is up in the mix here, because we've seen in previous years that when people get out of sight, it's very hard to catch up.
Yeah, but pacing is all important, and particularly after the storms that we mentioned last night. There was a lot of rainfall, although it's drying out pretty quickly here in the hills. The humidity level as a result is a bit higher. That tends to take it out of particularly the Africans who aren't used to racing at high humidity. So, you know, is there a chance that Filarisse Kisang is just getting the pacing, just overcooking it a little bit? Well, here we go with the men's. They are underway. They're underway, and it's a big field of men's. And we'll go through the favourites as they get underway. I think El Azawi is going to be a man to watch, having won the final last year, having won the whole tour last year. What a moment that was for him. But he's a runner who will track the fastest and then generally overtake them with his turn of speed in the closing stages. We'll expect to see him feature fairly early.
Absolutely, and I can't see him here yet. We have Philemon Kiriego, who has won Sierras, and now he came second last in the last race. He came second in Gobi. He's at the front here. The ones to watch of this front pack, in the white on the far left, is Remy Bonnet. He is the 2022-2023 winner. By far the best climber in this group of athletes. Elisine didn't take the start line. We didn't see him announced to us. I can't see him in the mix. He would be in that front group from his previous form. Is there a chance he's not racing today? I have to wonder.
Well, health issues can hit you at any stage. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. It would be desperately sad for him, and bad news for the fans as well, and certainly bad news in terms of defending his tour title. But maybe, you know, it's worth explaining, David, 8 races prior to the grand final, and only 3 of those races count. So you could just do 3 races and save yourselves for those. But I don't think that would have been in Elisine El Azawi's plan initially.
Absolutely not. And significantly, we can see on the right here, Joyce has made a move on Nurmi Lang. Now, I suspect Philaris Kisang is still out front in ahead. And it looked for a while that Joyce was getting frustrated, stuck behind. So now Joyce has moved up to second place. But here we are with the men's, and I still can't see Elisine in that field. We have, to the left of picture, Philemon Kiriego. Then we have in the centre, this is a new runner who has joined us. We know that he's a very, very fast climber. This is Paul, just trying to check his surname, from training out of Italy. And in the white behind is Remy Bonnet, the 2022 and 2023 series champion. So a lot of questions being raised here about whether Elisine is actually on the course, because while he has sat back in the past, he's never been this far back from a front group. So real concerns to know if Elisine is on the course or not.
Well, I think we'll find out once the climbing starts. There is, I guess, there's a possibility that he's decided not to go with the pace on that first flat kilometre. But as soon as they start climbing, if he's there, we'll expect to see him move to the front. Do apologise, no news coming through in the latter stages. We're now desperately trying to get hold of contacts and see if we can get some information about last year's series winner as we have a close-up on the front of the women's field. And as you'll see, the filming of a race like this is so difficult because partly they're in the trees, and you know, a drone isn't effective enough, so they rely on professional runners, professional mountain bikers who carry GoPros, beam the signal back to HQ, and they do a fantastic job. They have to be world-class athletes themselves.
Now we can see Paul Machoka at the front of this in the grey colour. To the left is Philemon Kiriego from Team Run Together on AG, and Remy Bonnet on the left. We talk a lot about how conditions change for the athletes, but it's also true of our camera runners and our camera cyclists. I was woken up this morning by a thunder clap because there was an absolute downpour earlier. So the trail is actually a lot wetter than you'd expect given how sunny it looks now. And not only does that cause that trouble for our athletes, we know that the cyclists struggle to get up those hills. So it might be we won't be able to get the very front of the race very easily until they hit the downs and we transition through to the camera runners. The cyclists tend to cover the trail when it's very fast, and we get the camera runners in for the more technical ones. So apologies if we're not able to bring you the front of the race in the way we have in previous races. But we're here now with Paul Machoka. We know he's a very good climber, and Philemon Kiriego, who is the super fast downhiller and flat runner. So at the moment, our top two true to form, but still no Elisine El Azawi.
Well, this is similar to China, David, where we had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the opening stages of that race on the Great Wall, with the Kenyans putting up an unbelievable effort there. Won in the end by Patrick Kimachino, with Philemon Kiriago in second place. Joey Hadorn of Switzerland, brilliant performance to get on the podium out in China. Something I noticed there, David, and in Kobe, to be honest, that the downhill sections, instead of being sort of rocky technical, they were dusty technical.
Yeah, completely different terrain and underfoot to what we've seen in American trail, in European trail, and those baked summers and lack of soil texture meant that a lot of our athletes were sliding out. And it's particularly hard when they're grouped together as they were, because people were having to brake based off other people's speeds. But this is where the looped format really comes to play. We can see a big group of them here all together. If this was a longer climb, they'd actually have bigger gaps forming between them, but they know they just need to get to the top of the hill, and so they're staying together for now.
So breaking out of the tree line for the first time, and the race leader in the women's. No real surprise to see Philarise Kassang going so well from Team Run Together. Great climber, as David has said. She was good in Sierra Zinal last year, but faded in the closing stages. So, you know, I think there has to be a little bit of a question mark over the pacing strategy at the moment.
Yeah, and we've actually seen this in every race I've ever watched her. She goes out very fast. She's got quite an unusual running style. But even the year before in Sierra now, it was the same story. And she first emerged in the Golden Trail Finals 2 years ago, where 3 years ago, in fact, where she ran 5 races back to back to back. Was a very strong climber, but would always fade in the second half. And what you were saying earlier about the humidity is really going to be a factor today, because our athletes have come in thinking that it's going to be quite dry. But with that overnight rain, the trails are a little bit moist, but in these trees, all of that moisture is being trapped. And we know Elisine, we know Joyce, we know Philarise have struggled in the past with humidity, and you can't practice humidity in Kenya if you haven't got that weather.
Yeah, and although the tracks look fairly dry, it's really just the top centimetre of dust that is dry. Underneath, there's still a bit of moisture, so it's going to be fascinating to see the first downhill section, or the first serious downhill section, just to see how it works. In terms of footwear, do you think there have been any last-minute changes with overnight rain?
I mean, there should have been. I'd imagine someone like Bogdan Damian, maybe even Remy Bonnet, who are, you know, Bogdan's a technical specialist. He's very, very good down these hills. Elisine as well, he knows the wet, but unless you've run races like Zagama, or you've been to run in the UK and Scandinavia, you don't really understand quite how much the terrain changes just with a little bit of rain on that mud. So I'd expect it to play in the favour of Naomi Lang will be catching these runners up significantly on these downhills. But it's actually lap 3, the one where it's far more technical, and that down is where people are able to really start eating up the yardage with their technicality. But we can see here Madalena now ahead of Joyce. She has caught her on that downhill. We know that Madalena is a better climber than Joyce, and I'd expect you can see them coming together now. But interestingly, when we talk about people being good on downhill, there are different skills and different types of downhill. Now we're going to see over the course of this race very different skills displayed on these downhill sections. In lap 4 and 5, where there aren't as many rocks, it is smoother. that's where our more flowing runners are able to stretch out, but it's on lap 2 and 3 that the technical specialists are able to use their ability to pick a line. And even if you're a fast downhill runner, if you're not used to technical terrain, you won't be able to deploy your speed.
Yeah, one of the advantages of the flower format, you know, and they call it that because each of the loops looks like a petal. Perhaps the biggest advantage is that everyone keeps coming back to the centre, the race sort of organisation in Nolly, and the fans get to see much more of the athletes. But also, David, that the sort of characteristic of each of the loops is just slightly different. So you may be leading after loop 1 because you're a brilliant road runner, but by the end of lap 2, you may be struggling because you've had to deal with some pretty tough hills. And each of those 5 loops has slightly different features that suit slightly different people.
And the interesting thing about this course compared to a race like Kobe, so in Kobe it was 4 laps, and we saw that Patrick came through from behind last year and this year. We saw last year Maud Mathis come from behind. But if we think back to 2 years ago in the final that was here, once athletes fell off the front of the pack, they didn't catch up. And I think because he's a shorter and sharper and the last 2 loops are so runnable, it meant if you aren't up with the front, you aren't able to actually increase your speed to catch them. And so this is really challenging for our athletes when they know they have to commit early just to be in with a chance of that top 3. And so, as you say, on these technical ups and downs of the first 3 laps, it makes it very hard for someone, if you're not a technical runner, knowing that you have to somehow try and hang on in there.
Yeah, certainly is the lead of the men's race, and the Kenyans featuring up the front of the field as we're getting used to. And it, you know, they've always been quick. They've always had fantastic flat speed. But it's taken them a year or 2 to learn the skills involved in trail running. And, you know, my experience is telling me that the downhills are getting more and more technical, but maybe that's just a case that they're learning how to take them faster. So when you watch them come down these things, it looks so much harder than it used to.
Yeah, absolutely. It used to be that we'd get a lot of fast runners coming to Sierra now because it is less technical. There's less of a downhill. It's a very long climb. And that would be people's route into trail running. But we've seen with people like Joylene Chipingino, athletes arriving almost as if they are fully formed, complete athletes where they are able to run the downhills. And speaking to the coaches of Milimani runners and run through, they are training specifically on downhills, whereas previously they'd be running in trails but not actually practicing attacking a downhill, which is very hard to do unless you practice it. So we are seeing people like Philemon Kiriego and someone like Kevin Kibet, who we haven't seen in this top 5 yet. 2 years ago, it was Kevin that made the break on lap 3. He was the fastest descender. He was the person that caused them all to drop Remy. And so it's surprising in a race when you suddenly have a Kenyan runner actually making the ground up on the downhill, and our European athletes and American athletes aren't used to it, and it then changes their tactics, knowing now that they have to attack at different points in the course because they can't just catch up on the down.
Yeah, that's very interesting indeed. And I think, you know, a lot of our viewers will have either be runners, hill runners, or even walkers. And we all know that that first hill climb of the season, your legs are shot to bits, largely from the downhill, not the uphill, it's the downhill. So when they're racing these multiple loops and they're doing maybe 10 ascents and 10 descents, what is the difference in the terms of muscle damage done, the DOMs that so many people talk about? Do you get it when you run flat out, or is it just that most of us are running down the hills trying to decelerate and these guys are trying to maintain or gain speed?
Yeah, the better a downhill runner, hopefully the more you can then, as you say, protect your legs a little bit, because what a lot of these athletes will be thinking is not run fast, but run light. And they're trying not to put too much weight through their quads so they can save themselves from that damage. When you have a very long up and down climb, or even one or two, it means it doesn't matter so much if you punish your legs, because you're just flowing down that one bit of descent. But with this format, it's not just 5 laps. There's actually 2 of the laps have different descents in them. So then they're really coming down the hills intensely 7 times. And if you haven't trained for that, if you haven't done weights, if you haven't done interval sessions downhill, you may survive 1 or 2 of these downs, but by the end of the race, your quads will be hurting so much you won't be able to run, even if your lungs are allowing you to.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to get a decent view once they break out of the trees at the top of the course. This is a very technical section. Lots of guidance on the way. I think this route's brilliantly marked, David. We saw quite a few navigation errors, even on the Great Wall of China. Some people trying to find themselves jumping out of windows. And the one thing you noticed in China was for every sort of junction, there were 20 people helping and 20 people shouting, and actually that didn't help the case at all. You really just need one person who's very clear as to where the runners have got to go and pointing in the right direction. Multiply that by 20 and you get chaos.
Yeah, especially most of us, I think we know that we means yes or no means no, but when they were in China, none of the helpful communication they were getting from the volunteers was actually helping them understand the directions. But we have our men's leader on the left here. I believe this is Michael Sayoli. He's a very strong climber. He's another athlete we were expecting to see at the front here. I'd be surprised if he manages to last until the end of the race leading, but he is playing his cards early because we know that he can climb better than the other athletes. But it wouldn't surprise me if when we come to the next long downhill, he is caught by Philemon Kiriego.
Just 18 minutes on the clock already, and yeah, so difficult for the cameraman, David. The rougher the terrain, the harder it is for them to watch the frame of their pictures and also watch their footing as they go. But they do a remarkable job all the way through the Global Trail World Series. Madalena Fleuria.
I've just had the ladies come through to the left of me. In fact, it isn't Joyce Injiru in the front group. Just to confirm, that isn't Joyce Injiru in the front group with Philaris Kisang. I'm just going to check who that is. But we can see Madalena Fleuria in 3rd at the moment, and Joyce is maybe another 20 meters behind. So to the left here on the screen, that is where I'm sat, and I can see them run past me. So apology if the noise is in your ears. But we have a new runner who wasn't even in my notes as being someone for us to look out for, who is up in the front with Philaris. So exciting to see. And then a little bit of a gap. Naomi Lang has just come past me now. She's around 20 seconds behind Joyce. So our top 5 ladies all within about a minute of each other.
And that, of course, is the second loop completed on the women's race. Remember the distance at 26k. Generally, the races on the tour between 26 and 42 kilometers.
And so they're coming, this is the end of lap 2. So they're going out on an 8.3 4K laps, 490 meters in the next one. Significantly, this is the technical climb, and this is the technical descent. And this is where we'll get a real insight into our front two female runners, how well they've adapted to this muddier course, and if they've got a good downhill technical skill. It wouldn't surprise me if we start to see the gaps in our top five extend for that first climb. It's at 291 meters climbing this lap 3 to begin with, but then those gaps start to close up as they start descending again. But our top 5 ladies and already you can see there, Philarice Kisang has pulled away as soon as it got steeper. She's put some gap into her. And Madalena is also catching up. We know Madalena Ferrer is a very, very good climber. And she was looking to try and start more conservatively in this race. So this top 3 now, very close together, given their different skills. But Philarice now looks like she's pulling away and really looking to do some damage on this climb.
Yeah, so important for the Kenyans. They live a very different lifestyle to many of the Europeans, and you know, earning money on this tour is crucially important for them. The prize money is everything. They tend not to get the sponsorship that some of the better known Europeans will pick up, and Philarice Kisang looks very, very eager at the moment. It's a blistering pace she's setting, but there's still a long way to go. She's on loop 3 of 5, and what do you make of the style on the hills? It's not quite as fluent as some.
It isn't, but this is how Philarice runs. She always looks like she's in. It has some kind of tension in her body. It's very unusual, but I've always seen her climb in this fashion, and it doesn't look fast, it doesn't look that fluid, but it's incredibly effective. But yeah, Philarice is someone who... So you can see how it's very hard to actually climb part of this course. Lap 3 is the one where there's a lot of steps, there's a lot of stones, and the fact that they're having to change each step is incredibly tiring. So not only do you have to be a fast climber, unless you're a strong climber, unless you've been really doing weights in the gym, when you're changing your step in the way that they're having to in these steeper climbs, that's where it starts to do the damage. And if you're someone who's not prepared to hike and not prepared to walk, if you're insisting on running this, then you're actually going to be burning far more of your glycogen stores and also using up your muscles, damaging your muscles a bit more. So it'll be interesting to see how she approaches the top of this climb, because it becomes extremely steep.
Yeah, and then we've got to consider, David, the men starting, what, 10 minutes behind the women. The leading men will already be catching up with the back end of the women's field. And on a technical climb like this, it just means you've got to do more twisting and turning. You've got to be even more focused on your footwork as you work your way up through these twisting trails. And Philarice Kisang, yeah.
And magnify that by 10 on the down, where if you're trying to overtake someone and maintain your speed, it can be very tricky. And we talk about race experience, and actually having a cool head and knowing when to overtake and when to sit back just means that you don't use up as much energy when you're making the overtake of the female athletes. But the men are actually just about to pass me and my 10, so I can tell you, wow. Our top 3 for El Hassin is on the course. El Hassin is on the course. He's just picked up his water bottle. But see this pack? This is the entire of the front of the men's race. There's about 15 of them still together, which is incredible at this stage.
So that's 2 laps completed for the men. The Kenyans still dominant out front. Through goes Remy Bonnet with the white cap on. He is built for hills, that man. He's a fantastic climber and the winner of the Global Trail Tour both in 22 and 23. So keep an eye on Remy Bonnet for this 3rd climb. It could be his moment to shine, but Elisine Elizui is he's there, and he is going to make this race very, very exciting. What do you think was going on? Did he miss the start? Was he late out of bed, or is he just playing tactically?
I think it must be the tactical. He turned up here yesterday. He hadn't cut his hair since the final last year, and I think he's got a new level of calmness to him. He shaved his head, he got in the zone, but I think he feels more confident than ever now, and doesn't have to be at the front. I know he is aware that everyone is thinking about him. All the questions in the press conference are to do with how are you going to beat El Hussein, and actually why sit at the front? Why make the decisions on which route to take when he's got the whole of this race to catch up? But we can see here now how it's getting hard to climb up. But imagine trying to run down this flat out when you're doing overtakes when there are ladies around you. It's incredibly hard to do. But this is, I believe, Michael Sayoli. Is this Paul? Oh, no, this is Paul Machoka, I believe. Paul Machoka, teammate of Kevin Kibet, who is leading up this climb. But actually, at this stage, it doesn't really matter who's at the front because the pack is so tightly grouped together.
Philemon Kiriago in 2nd place and looking very comfortable in my book. There's Paul Machoka, so it's not Paul Machoka in the front. It's now Kiriago who in fact takes the lead. These 3 have been chopping and changing for the last 20 minutes or so, and the Kenyans are so good at working together. Many of them run together all the way through, and they're doing some damage at the moment.
And you're right, that was Michael Sayoli. I don't recognise the lovely new Run Together kit. But you're right to talk about teamwork, because this is the first race we've had in the Golden Trail where Patrick and Philemon haven't been racing together. Patrick, 2 wins in the series so far, is resting this one out. But significantly, as you say, Philemon now has his new Sherpa, Patrick Machoka. We know Philemon is good on the downhills. Sitting behind a runner on the up is actually mentally very relaxing. You don't have to make the decisions on where you're running, and you can just focus on getting your breathing right and just following the person ahead. And we're seeing a similar thing here. Remy Bonnet in the white at the front, Elisine Elizui behind. These 2 know each other very well. Hussein has lived in Switzerland for a lot of his running life, and they like to run like this together. Remy will lead the ups, and when they come to the downhill, that's where El Hussein will overtake, and he'll decide the route, which allows Remy to then flow in behind. So the fact that we've got 2 teams battling together is very significant, and actually they'll be wanting their teammate to stay up with them for as long as possible so they can share some of this work.
Yeah, the Kenyans with 2 out of 2 victories so far on the men's tour. Of course, a brilliant win by Sarah Alonso in Kobe. Madalena Fleury in 2nd on that occasion. But the Kenyans came back in the women's race. Caroline Kimutai getting the win in China. Philarice Kisang, the pace setter in the women's race. Very, very minimal foot lift as she goes through.
And we know that she's done very well in the short climbing races previously. She does a lot of mountain running in Europe. So the 26K today, if you're thinking that this is comparable to 26 road race is very, very different. We think our women will finish around the 2:20 mark. So this is actually quite a long race for someone like Philorys Kisang. She's not used to running for this long. But we're now with who we think are our third and fourth. Elusine, last year's winner, currently on our screen, ready to make an attack.
Well, you saw the directions, the arrows there, telling them which way to go on which particular loop, and no problem for Elizawi, who's just following Remy Benet. And Benet, an unbelievable climber. You know, there was a stage where he was clearly the world's best. Have the rest caught up, or do you think Remy just slowing down a little?
I don't actually know. It's really hard to tell because the races they've done where they've really had their best performances have often been so different. Remy has been specialising in the big records that have been at altitude. But the question is whether it's Remy's the best or Patrick Cabagino the best climber in the world. And that is one of those pub debates that I'm sure happens across the world. But significantly, we see when a lot of our newer runners, particularly from Kenya, come, they tend to be better climbers. They've come from track, they've come from vertical kilometre races. And so they tend to go out fast. I'd be surprised if Paul Machoka or Michael Sayoli can last at this intensity. But this next lap is 2 years ago where the race was blown apart in our men's. We saw Kevin Kebet take off down the terrain, dragging Philemon Kiriege with him, and Elusine was then looking back to see if Remy was going to join them. And at that moment, Remy realised he wasn't as fast as them on the down. He let them go and could never catch them again. And in yesterday's press conference, Remy said that coming into this season, he's analysed what he can do to try and improve, because I think at the end of last season, he just thought, there's nothing I've done wrong. I've tried everything this year and I've been beaten in every tactic. So he's been focusing on his downhill running significantly more in the build up to this race, on the technical, but also these faster flows. So it wouldn't surprise me if Remy's up with them more than he has been in previous races.
Back with Philorys Kisang leading the women's race, and she has a little bit of daylight between herself and the rest at the moment. 3 Kenyans in the lead in the women's race, as it is the case in the men's at the moment. And this is going to be fascinating because they have not had a serious bit of downhill yet. And we'll see how she gets on.
I mean, she's flowing incredibly well, and as you can say, she really doesn't lift her legs up that much. It must be incredibly efficient for running downhills. But given that it's only been a 300-meter climb and then 500 meters in the whole of this lap, she's really put some distance in between her and the rest. And I was expecting them to be closer than this at this stage.
Well, I think we'll see some changes once they get back down to Nolly again. I'd be surprised if the gap between the leaders doesn't close up a little bit on that downhill section. We've yet to see exactly how the downhill sections have reacted to last night's rain. As we go back to the men's, Michael Sayoli, Paul Machoka
here at the front. This is now Philemon leading out his teammates, Michael Sayoli. I'm surprised by this because Philemon is, while he's not a bad climber, he's known for his downhill. So the fact that he's happy to be at the front on these climbs suggests that he is feeling very confident today. And I would have thought that Remy Bonnet and Elisila Lazoui would have been closer to the front here, because they know what happened 2 years ago, and if you weren't leading at that stage, you didn't catch up. So I don't know if they're not feeling quite as fast, or whether this is some tactical naivety going on.
Time will tell. Time will tell. Just over 25% of the race distance covered. Now they're through 7.5K. It's a 26-kilometer race in all. Certainly not the toughest one on the tour.
Just to confirm, this isn't our men's leader. This is Philarise Kisang, looking at her running style. She often runs with her hands held out. Significantly, she's running with a water bottle. It's something she wasn't doing 2 years ago. And the fact that it is so humid here, I think that's going to be essential for her. That could actually make the difference in her getting to the finish line, still leading. Nutrition has been a real issue for her and for Joyce Sinjiru. So this is a really good sign that she's learning, she's adapting, and she's looking great right now over these slightly smoother trails.
Now you're an expert, David, in the nutrition. I come from a winter sport where the sort of general feeling is 30 mils of fluid every 20 minutes is about optimum. What's the feeling here in Italy with these humid conditions? How much fluid would you want to be taking on?
I mean, you wouldn't necessarily want to be having too much more than that, but a lot of the time you decide your drinking strategy based on the aid stations. And because they're for each year, so many times in this course, it gives them far more opportunity to switch bottles. But it also, and we can see here, Madalena Furia and Joyce Sinjiru, we talked about the downhill. You can see already, Madalena is tearing this up. This is coming into a technical section now, and they are absolutely catching up on Philarise. This still isn't the part where Madalena, I will be able to do the biggest damage, but just the change in how they're feeling. Madalena now taking the lead in the race for the first time, and at a similar stage in the race to where she took the lead 2 years ago. On lap 3, this downhill is where she really made her mark. She was confident coming into this. She knew the trail. I don't think Philarise Kisang has had an opportunity to actually look at the trail to the extent that it is known by Madalena, but you can already see the difference this is making. And actually that isn't Joyce Sinjiru in 3rd place. We're still trying to clarify who exactly that is. This isn't Joyce Sinjiru in 3rd place, which is surprising. So Madalena now stretching her lead at the front of this race down this technical course.
Yeah, interesting to see that Philarise Kisang has picked up her downhill pace since Madalena Furia has gone through. But, you know, once Furia is, 30-40 meters ahead, she loses that advantage of having a pathfinder on the way down. She really had to take the risk and get tucked in behind the Romanian, but that is not going to happen. And then our 3rd place runner, I think, will probably be catching up with Philarise Kisang in the next 100-150 meters or so. Maybe those two can work together to build the speed on the way back down to Nolly for the 3rd time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could see the body language slightly different. Madalena was leaning forward. She was using gravity to flow down this trail with fewer breaks, whereas the 3rd place runner, and to a certain extent as well, Philarise Kisang, they were slightly crouched. They were scared of going down that terrain too fast. And doing that means you're braking with your quads. And the fact that they have to do so many downhills is going to build up that damage. But we're now coming back to look at who is in 4th. This is now Joyce Sinjiru here. This is Joyce Sinjiru in 4th place, starting to flow down those trails. She's starting significantly further behind than where she should be right now, though. Something is clearly up with her running.
Yeah, there was another small navigational error there. I think Joyce Sinjiru actually saved the day for the runner that's with her.
And the men
it's all about focus
on the ladies.
Yeah, They are absolutely flying. Is that who's that in fourth place? We got three Kenyans out up front. Is that
No,
Elizoe who's gone into third?
Elisine is now in third. You can see he's where he loves to be. Philemon Kiriego at the front, scorching out significantly though. Remy Bonnetar and another slight error. This is exactly where Joyce took the wrong turn as well. You can see those yellow you can see the yellow bands in the trees helping to direct you. It's cost a little bit of time, but he's already in prime position. Elisine Alazoui in third place on the shoulder. For me, he is controlling this race right now.
Yeah, he is the master of sitting in behind, but you know, Philemon Kiriego and the rest, they all know what his tactics are. He did it all the way through last season and then put in a punishing burst at the end. Slightly controversial finish in Mammoth at the end of last season where he squeezed out the man alongside him, who on that occasion was Kipin Jano. But otherwise, you cannot deny the speed he has over that closing kilometre.
And you can see the way that this front pack of four have been concertinaing. And this is where it can be a significant advantage to just sit behind, because Philemon is having to decide the route. He's making the decisions on the turns. He's taking the risk of going the long way. But also, it just means someone like Elisine, he can just relax. He doesn't set the pace, and he can just flow where they are. And we saw 2 years ago when it came to the penultimate 2 laps, time and time again, Philemon was taking the long route round the corners, and Elisine would just take a slight shortcut, saving himself 1 meter, 2 meters. Not only do you eat up the ground faster, but mentally, it's so frustrating if you're at the front, seeing your opposition save a yard here and there. And already Elisine is doing that, and the question is, how can they shake him off in the second half of this race?
Floria on her own again after the leading men have come through, and I think that might have been a little bit of a shock that the leading men gaining so fast.
Yeah, we'd expect, given that it was a 10-minute start, we'd expect them to probably have overtaken after about an hour in the men's race. So the men are really scorching an incredible pace right now. Madalena, we saw there hiking a little bit of that terrain, and actually I think she's doing the right thing. There are parts of this course on the lap of Loop, the climb of Loop 3, the beginning of it, and the beginning of the climb of Loop 4 are the same. They can be very, very steep with different leg size stretches as you go up, and so saving your muscles, engaging your glutes a little bit more just saves the glycogen stores, but also you feel like you're still in control rather than taking tiny steps. I think it's a very mature way she's running now, and we know that Madalena is a good climber. She's a good descender. If they can't catch her up this climb, she's then got 200-meter descent, and there's only one really big climb after this for Philarise Kisang to try and reel her in. So Madalena will be hoping she doesn't hear from them too much to the top of this point, and then I think the advantage is firmly in her hands.
Yep, but the finish is down the bottom of the hill, so there's always a descent to finish, which is good news for her. Having to contend with the locals and some of the tourists who are out on the trails, it's not so bad if you're running on your own, but the leading men, a group of 4, if they suddenly come across a group of 8 tourists, that could cause a few problems, and I hope they've all been warned that there is a race going on. You can see just the problems here. It's a really narrow path.
And especially, you just don't expect people to be coming at the pace they are. I mean, this is a very steep climb that Madeleine is going up now. And you're right, let's just hope that they hear our runners coming from behind, but especially on those downhills. But 4 of them still grouped together. Now, we asked Philemon going into the race in America last year what he's going to do about El Hussein and his sprint finish, because Philemon knows that he's now raced him twice where they've been head-to-head into the last few kilometers, and twice he's lost. And Philemon didn't have an answer. And this is my worry. I don't know if he knows what to do. I don't think any of our athletes know what to do about El Hussein. The only person who's actually dropped him is Manu Marias in Zagama 2 years ago. And that was over very technical terrain, of which there isn't any in the second half of this race. So how do you drop that faster runner? And so Philemon is going to have to significantly bury himself at some point in the second half of this race on a climb, maybe on a more shallower downhill, and just risk blowing up if he wants to win this race.
But there was only, what, 2 seconds between Philemon Kiriago and Lazoui in the final in Headland last year. So surely the easy way to do it is just improve your speed over the last 200 meters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that Headland, there was single track coming into the final corner, and significantly El Hussein was leading on that first corner, which it was very hard to overtake. But we've seen this with Philemon time and time again. He lost in Sierra Zanao to Kylian Jornet last year by 2 seconds. He was second in Kobe this season behind Patrick Kipangino. He was second by only a matter of, I think, 10 seconds again in China. And he just doesn't seem to be attacking at the right moments. And between them, we don't actually know who's got the fastest sprint finish, because El Hussein manages to choose his overtake at a point that Philemon isn't expecting it. He's always pulling away, and once he's ahead, he's then very hard to catch. But did you see about 3 minutes ago, Madalena looking over her shoulder?
Well, I think she's obviously a little bit concerned about Philarise Kisang, but she's got herself a decent amount of distance after that first long downhill.
Now this is Valentina Rute from Atletica Salazar. So she is a training partner of Joyce Njiru and Kevin Kibet, and also of Paul Machoka. So she isn't someone we were tipped off about, but clearly a very good runner here, and in second place at the moment.
So just checking that we still have 4 runners in the leading group of men. We do. And they're all looking pretty comfortable at this stage. The second of the big climbs, there's Remy Bonnet, who maybe we'd expect to be a little bit further up. Madeleine Fleury with another little look over the shoulder.
Is this Philarise ahead, or has she just been overtaken by a runner? This looks like it could be Philarise Kisang has caught Madalena on the climb in the second half of lap 3. Wow, it's back on.
Well, isn't that often the case with these multiple climbs, multiple descents? And we've got a classic case of one athlete who's absolutely top of the game in climbing, and Madeleine Fleury flows down the hills like a silky river. She's so smooth. But the faster you go down the hill, does it sort of balance out that you do more damage to the muscles if you take it fast?
It very much depends on what it's like underfoot. If you've got a smoother terrain, then actually you can flow through it a bit more, you can get your legs spinning over, you're not braking. If you're having to turn with that as well, then it becomes very challenging. But we can see Remy here in 5th place, and he'll know that even though there are 4 athletes ahead of him, there is a high chance that, not just because of the humidity, but because of the intensity of the speed they've been going, some of these athletes aren't going to make it to the finish line in that front group. So he'll be hoping that if he just maintains his pace, runs at a speed he knows he can maintain all the way to the finish, that means he'll be able to pick up places as he goes. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's not head down right now. He's still thinking there's opportunities to be had.
Yeah, and if you were to design a course specifically for Remy Bonnet, what would it be? Just bottom to top, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the Pikes Peak ascent, where you start at 2,000 meters, go to 4,000 meters. He is the course record holder there. But strangely, Sierra Zanau in many ways should be a very good course for him, as more climbing the descent. But he's always struggled there, partly because of the pressure. But he's got his head up still. He'll be wanting to attack in the second half of this race.
Well, the women up at 242 meters, the start line at about 2 meters above sea level in Noli, medieval town in the northwest of Italy. It is a stunning, stunning area. A number of the athletes getting round the sites at the start of the day. The towers of Noli. And the cobble streets have to be seen to be believed, but luckily they don't do too much running on the cobbles in this race.
Yeah, although coming into that cobbled finish when you've got tired legs is extremely painful, especially when they go through that riverbed. I know Judith Weeder, who was second here 2 years ago, was saying how it's something you then really have to focus on, because you can turn an ankle quite easily. But one of the things we've talked about is how the format of this race brings groups back together, and that we have closer packs because our descenders are able to stick with the climbers. And we've seen this, we can see this in both of our men's and our women's. 4 men together at the front of the race and 3 women grouped together. And this is where experience really counts. If you can just relax now and start to form a strategy, but for someone like Elisine, the fact he doesn't know 2 of these runners will actually also make it a little bit more complex, because he doesn't know what their finishing speed is like. He doesn't know if they're people who are specialised in longer distances, or if they're very good at downhill. So part of the reason he'll be sat at the back of this group is because he'll be observing his opposition. If he can see that they don't move quite as fluidly on the down, he'll then use that to devise his attack, because he knows as soon as it gets a little bit rougher, if he goes at that point, they won't be able to stick with him.
Yeah, the winning time 2 years ago, what was it, 1:56 for Elisine Alazoui, and he'll be looking to improve on that to win again today. Something that we know he will have done, David, is to really have a good look at the end of the course, decide his strategy. Where does he want to take the lead? Where's it so difficult for anyone else to overtake him after that? But how do you get to know the course well enough when you've only got a couple of days? What do you focus on?
It partly depends on your strengths and how you see the race playing out. We've got Filaris again pushing the pace on these climbs and really starting to build what's looking like a more and more significant lead. She was right on their shoulder, but now 20 meters. And someone like Elisine, he'll go out on this course and he'll look at the technical downs to try and figure out if there is a right way to run it, but also knowing the corners can be quite advantageous as well, because you know when you need to hold back and what speed to take them to get those turns correct. And
So the top three women only some 50 metres apart, and the top four men are something like 15 metres apart. This is exactly the scenario that we saw time and time again last year. Quite how the Global Trail course designers do it, I don't know, because so often in endurance races, David, the best just get further and further and further ahead. But it's not. This is like a sort of bit of elastic that's being stretched and then they're pulled back together. And really, the difference is the extreme of the uphill and the extreme of the downhill. A road race would not produce these sort of changes.
Absolutely, and because there are so many different skills and so many factors that go into racing a course like this well. How well you can run on mud, how well you can run on rock, how good you are up, how good you are down, how good you are at pacing, how well you've prepared and respond to humidity, to heat. All of these things change the outcome of a race. So we know that on those front four, we could design a course that each one of them would win over the other. And the challenge of this race, but also of the series, is being good at all these different factors so that you can win at a race that tests all of those. And that's what Ellison has been so good at. We know he's a good downhill runner. We know he's got good flat speed, and we saw in Mont Blanc last year when he was with Remy tried to burn him off on the big climb and he couldn't, and they were running at around world record pace for the vertical kilometre, and Remy still couldn't drop El Hussein on the climbs. And when you add to that his downhill speed and ability to just flow on technical trail, it's very hard to see a weakness in his running right now.
Yeah, I was starting to think that the Kenyans sort of need to employ some Tour de France tactics and take it in turns to break away and force Elazine to cover those breaks time and time again until there's nothing left in the Moroccan's legs. It's going to be a tough ask, but you've got to be prepared to work as a team for that to happen. Back with the women's, Filari Kisang leading the way. Madalena Florea, who was leading on the downhill, now in second place, but she's only some 35-40 metres behind, so we're expecting to see some changes on the next of the downhill sections, and we'll wait and see who is leading as they come into Nolly next time round.
And the fact that Joyce is in there in fourth, it wouldn't surprise me if she catches up at some point. She knows how to pace this race. I know going into it she was nervous about her nutrition. She has been struggling with it, but she has the experience of running longer races, which Filaris and Valentina Russo haven't had quite as much, and so the fact that she's still up there I think is significant at this stage, and Remy will be thinking the same. We saw in China with Ezequiel Russo holding the lead for the first 2/3 and then fading, not even in the top 5, and that will be at the back of his mind that we have two runs. The first half is fantastic, the second half is brutal, and the fact that this is 26k, they're running at what will feel like half marathon intensity, and those 4k at the end are just so punishing. So Remy will be thinking he's probably in a top 3 position right now.
So nothing changing with the leading men's, and Elazoui looking very, very comfortable at the back. I'd love to get a reading on his pulse rate and his breathing rate. I suspect he is well below max. He looks so chilled out there. The only danger is that the leader in that group of 3 makes a break on a very, very narrow section of the path where getting past the rest is very difficult to do. 20% gradient. It looks a whole lot flatter than it is, that is for sure. The GoPro taking a little bit of punishment on the cyclist helmet.
And our camera runners and camera cyclists when it becomes single track or it becomes more technical, they try and sit behind the athletes just to give them the space to be able to see what's coming. And we can see they're quite close together here. If it becomes more technical, those gaps may actually increase slightly to give them the space to be able to process what's happening on the floor. But significantly, they won't be looking down at their feet. They'll be looking 5 yards, 10 yards ahead, and their minds are almost thinking about the next step, not the step they're currently on. But this is where Ellison has the advantage. You can see this turn. He knows he can break early, and he'll be getting that information with more time, and already they've overtaken. You can see the difference in speed between the men and the women. Our French journalists remain on the left there, getting some great bonus shots.
Yeah, it's hard going. They certainly haven't been through that part of the trail with the machetes in the recent weeks. It's very, very tight indeed. The Mediterranean beckoning. Of course, Formula One taking place in Imola this weekend. It's only a 4-hour drive. There must be a few motorheads amongst the racers here. They could make it there in time for Sunday's race.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not come and have a lovely weekend here in northern Italy? Now, we've been doing a little bit of information on Valentine Ruto, who is in third place at the moment in the winnings. As you'd expect, a very, very fast half marathon and 5K time. She's got a 1:10 half marathon, and looking back in, she's raced shorter distances. She came fourth in the World Championships 2 years ago, the World Mountain Running Championships, but just over 14K. She's run the VK 7K before, came fifth 2 years ago. We can't find any significant races that she's done over a half marathon. And while this is 26K, seems like a half marathon distance, actually compared to something like a half marathon on the road, if this were on the road, the level of intensity is closer to kind of 36, 37, 38 kilometers of intensity. So when you look at the times, when you think about what they're running, that's what you should compare it to. But again, the lead's changing again and again and again. This is a fantastic race in the women's.
So just over the hour on the clock, 1:02:58 as they approach the exchange once again. And they know that being down in Nolly means the next section is uphill. There's Madalena Floria, still up with the leading women, just about to be overtaken by that group of 4 men.
What a shot that is. 5 athletes all together. I mean, she'll be intrigued by what's happening herself. There's nothing like it in a race when you get to see all your friends run by, because they all know each other incredibly well. But they're all just returning to the town now. The cheer zone coming up within the next 300-400 meters, and they're about to go out onto lap 4. This is 9.2K with over 500 meters of climbing, split into 2 sections. The start of this lap has the same climb as the climb of lap 3. And there are some very long downhills as well. It's the highest climb of the day, but the downhills are far less technical. So I wouldn't expect Madalena to be able to catch up quite as much on the downhills of this lap as she has in the other laps. And so the fact that she's drifting off the back now, I think she's going to find it hard to catch them unless they've gone out too fast or they have issues with their nutrition. But just over 15K now into our race. In fact, the men have just come past my tent now. They're going incredibly quickly, and you may hear the cheers behind me. All 4 of them locked together still.
African domination once again in the men's field. Alazawi, of course, from Morocco, a guide there, and actually he was guiding a group, and I think it was a Swiss individual who decided that he was a real talent because he ran just about everywhere else that they went on camels, and he was funded. He's moved to Switzerland, and over the last few years has really taken the world of trail running by storm. Through come the well, a mix of the men and the women, still running very fast. In terms of training, David, you know, if you run a vertical K, most of us are then laid out for the rest of the day, but you know, they have special training regimens where they'll do a hill climb and then try and do as quick a 10K on the flat road as possible. Is that the way you get good at this sort of game?
That was the belief at one point, and just to fill you with some things I've seen on the course here, Cesare Maestri, the local Italian runner, former world snowshoeing champion, it looked like he was ahead of Remy at this stage. He may be up to 4th place, but Madalena had a nice little lead there. She was looking fluid with Filaris Kisang and Valentine Ruto still running together. But yeah, this was the rumor that this is the way to get fast, because we know that, and actually Joyce Njiro had just come past me in 4th place. She's around 45 seconds behind the women, an approximate split time. But before Sierra Zanao, which is a race with a huge amount of climbing and then a lot of fast running, Kylian Jornet, the course record holder there, he did exactly that. He did a vertical kilometer, which is when you climb 1K as fast as possible, and then a 10K time trial. And Remy Bonnet, in training for Sierra Zanao, the race that he wants to win more than any other race, did the same session. He was a minute faster, I think, on the 10K than Kylian was. But he said it took so much out of him that he couldn't then train well afterwards because he was just destroyed by that effort. And so this is the challenge. How do you train your body to be able to run fast when you've done so much climbing and you've done so much descent? Because if you try and replicate it in your training, it then cuts down the number of days that you can train well for afterwards. So you've really got to build up to these distances and these intensities. And it's incredibly hard to do when you've got so many races in your season.
Yeah, you mentioned Maestri, who's a world champion in snowshoe racing. I find that astonishing because the tempo in snowshoeing must be 10% of what it is when you're trail running. And I just wonder how he then switches to the fast twitch fibers or the faster twitch fibers when it comes to trail running to be able to compete at this level.
And that's part of the challenge, actually, our athletes have here, because Cesare lives near Lake Garda, but he'll be doing a lot of his training in the mountains of the Dolomites. And similarly, Remy Bonnet, he is the world champion of skimo, and we've seen with athletes like him, as Sophia Lauchley, who was series champion 2 years ago, they spend the winter not running quite as much, but actually using skimo as an opportunity to really get their lungs in great shape, very good VO2 max, and then trying to transition into the running season, which is very hard because your legs haven't been taking any kind of pounding while they've been doing skimo. Remy significantly said he started his running about a month earlier than he has previously to try and prepare. And Filaris overtaking, she's closed that gap, and it must be on the climb again. She's really dominating these climbs. 20 meters just disappeared on that first climb already. They've got 305 meters in this section of climbing, 500 on this loop. So there's plenty of distance for Filaris to try and get a lead. And I think she's going to have to lead at the top of this lap to stand a chance of winning this race, because we're seeing Madalena is far better flowing down the trails.
Well, it's a question of how much of a lead. You know, from what we saw on the first descent, I think and looks to be putting in an extra little bit of effort on this climb. There's much more climbing still to come, but if she can match Filarice Kasang on this climb, that might send a message to the Kenyan.
And look at the difference in styles. We spoke about this earlier, the fact that Madalena is choosing to power hike here. She's changing up her muscle groups. It's been shown you can save up to 30% of glycogen stores by using that strategy. And Filarice just refusing to walk, no matter how short the stride. But Madalena will be feeling fantastic right now on the shoulder, knowing she has that faster pace on the downhills. Is in perfect position to attack. And talking about perfect position to attack, I'm assuming El Hassin is just behind the camera runner here in a very similar place right now.
Well, it would be unusual for the cameraman to get in between the group if they hadn't got a significant gap between them. So maybe our two leaders in the men's race have opened up 20 meters or so.
There we go. There we go. Thank you, cameraman. It's like they're listening to us. All four of them still together on this climb, and they've got to do something. When you were saying they need to work together as a team, they need to commit runners, you were completely right. And if I was the manager of Team Run Together, I would right now be saying to Michael Saoli, in fact we've out of sight, and you need to force El Hassin to do something. But I think El Hassin knows these runners well enough that he only worries about Philemon. I don't think he's fearful of the other runners being able to last the distance with him. So he is still in prime position, looking good.
Beautiful footwork. And Madeleine Fleurir, has she gone ahead again? We just need the. I think she's returned the table somehow. And it's been consistently uphill since we last caught up with her, so maybe she started to feel fantastic. Possibly Kasang just pushing it too hard, because as you said, David, she closed that gap, that 20-second gap, very, very quickly at the start of the climb, and she might just have pushed herself into anaerobic threshold levels, and you cannot do that at this stage.
Now, she's coming close to the end of this 300-meter climb. There is then a very sharp descent before they've got a smaller climb again, and then a long descent into our finish, ready for the final lap. Now, we've seen with Madalena, she's really struggled in races with being able to finish at the speed that she starts. We saw 2 years ago she was almost caught by Judith Wieder. Judith took a slight wrong turn coming into the town, or else it would have potentially been a sprint finish between the two of them. But significantly here, I think Madalena's paced this very well today. She's never looked like she's been phased by Filarice taking to the front.
Joyce and Giro back in 5th place, as you may well have seen from the tables. Madalena Fleurir, the winner from 2 years ago. What are the chances of the two winners from 2023 Grand Final get the victory again today here in Nolly? It's looking pretty good for Fleurir at the moment. And of course, on the men's side, El Hassin Alazoui taking a famous victory ahead of Philemon Kiriago back in 2023. Remy Bonnet was, he was down in 4th place ahead of Eli Hemming on that occasion.
Now we're here with Remy Bonnet, Series Champion 2 go. Not just the technical ones, but flowing well over the slightly smoother terrain. And we're going to get an opportunity to see that. Now, as you can see, this is a single track where if I was Philemon Kiriego, I would be using this to my advantage, because if he breaks now, it's going to be very hard for El Hussein to overtake the other two runners. He's trapped bottleneck behind them all. And so Philemon should be using this to its advantage and trying to ensure that he can get enough of a gap now that El Hussein has to then get into the red zone to try and catch him up. Because only by doing small little strategies like that will he ensure that El Hussein comes into that final lap tireder than he has been in previous years. Because at the moment, El Hussein is not having to do any work. He's not choosing the route. He's not choosing the route. He's not choosing the pace. He is basically a passenger losing no mental energy right now.
So lap number 4 of 5. David, talk us through the final lap. They've obviously got to go back down in Nolly.
Starting to test each other, potentially surging, but they come back into the town, and it is quite hard to navigate when you're moving at the speed they are. And so if they haven't looked at the course previously and thought about how they're going to run when they're doing what will probably be sub 3-minute kilometer pace, they're really going to struggle with trying to focus and keep the pace. But we saw actually El Hussein broke on this lap 2 years ago. He waited until they came up to nearly at the road section. There was a little bit of trail, and then he just flew past Philemon as soon as there was no need for him to use Philemon's navigation. That's when he thought there's no advantage being anymore. Going to be happy to just sit here, and maybe he'll break even later. The only question mark he'll have is how fast is the finishing speed of these other two runners that I haven't raced before.
Yeah, Richard Atuya is certainly one of them. A little bit of an unknown quantity, and that is certainly going to make the final 10K very, very interesting to go. Just under 10K to go in this men's race. The women just a little bit further to go, having been overtaken by the men on that third lap. Madalena Florea was leading last time we saw, and I expect she'll still be there. It's going to be interesting to see.
You have to climb a little bit, you have to scramble, and it might be that her insistence on running the whole time that we saw early in the race is actually limiting her in those sections and allowing Madalena to power hike away, because hiking can be faster, but that's the last really technical uphill of this course from what I remember. But now you can see when we talk about the course opening up and it being smoother trails, this is very fast going terrain now, and you can. They're very thin. There are some turns coming up where El Hussein trims a yard here and there.
Yeah, but he knows it, and they know it as well. So they'll be on the look. out for a move from the and she certainly doesn't want to get in the way of the men as they come through.
And
remember,
back quite a lot.
Only a week to go before the next race in Zagama. I wonder whether that's why Remy Bonnet hasn't featured at the front of the field. Is he saving himself for that? We can discuss that in a little while. 25th for Zagama.
Going well up this hill, and actually Fiorese looks like she's in a... I was expecting her to be looking more tired at this stage of the race. We've mentioned how she doesn't typically run races over that half marathon distance, so the fact that she's flowing well now is good. What Madeleine will be hoping is if she can build a big enough gap that Fiorese will no longer be thinking about the win or position and not coming third, and if she can just get out of sight. Oh wow, they are incredibly close. Is that... Wow, yeah. Almost neck and neck here. This is a battle. Oh, incredible to see. They've got a little bit of climbing here, only about 100 meters left before a longer flowing downhill, but again Fiorese catching up. They keep on changing.
Well, this will be a little bit of a shock for Fleur, who overtook Kasang on the last of the uphills. So again, the table's being reversed, and has got to get herself, some would say 50 meters. I think she's got to be 100 meters clear before the final descent down into the town. They've got just under 10 kilometers still to race, so there are going to be a lot of twists in the tail, I think, of this particular race. And then just a slightly gradual downhill, and Fleury again opens up a meter or two. Such a difficult race to call. Good marshalling.
The fact that Madeleine Ferrier has led into this section, I think is important. There are some parts of single track where it would be hard to overtake, and they're coming up to the down quite soon. So if I was Fiorese, I'd be trying to get ahead so you can then control that downhill and limit the amount Madeleine is able to catch up.
Yeah, are you thinking that the more technical the downhill, the gap that Madeleine Fleury is going to open up?
I think that's... I suspect so, but actually in the second half of this race, it might be that Madeleine can pull as big a gap out of both terrains just by tasting that finish line, and also because she's more experienced at the longer distance, she's less likely to be cramping up. And also, as someone who's trained more for these downhills, she won't have had quite as much damage in her legs. And so the way they've conducted their first half of the race will actually then make more of an impact on this second half.
11.5 kilometers an hour, the pace being set at the moment. So not the fastest bit of the course.
The big question is, when is that move coming?
It's inevitable that it comes at some stage. How late will he leave it? And I mentioned Zagama, David, so they've got 7 days to recover before that. You know, Alazwi doesn't really want to go all out. He doesn't want to expend all his energy with only a week to recover after this one.
Absolutely, especially as I don't think we'll see Philemon Kiriego race Zagama. Remy Bonnet, I wouldn't expect to necessarily do it either. It's a more technical course. And so of this front five, it's really Elisine hasn't raced in Asia. He knows it's a good course for him, so the less work he has to do today, the better for his season, because it's not just about winning individual races, it's about performing across 3 races to score enough points.
Venue generally not announced until a certain stage of the season, but we do now know it's going to be in Italy, Valle dell'Edro, which is near Lake Garda, actually, in the Trentino area. It's absolutely stunning part of Italy. So 2 visits to Italy this year, and everyone looking forward to that. The gap between that, you know, they have a couple of races, first in Asia, now in Europe. Gap in between, to the athletes race or to the rest?
As well, you know that you're actually losing speed if you race too many times, but the Golden Trail has intentionally made the shorter races the week before the longer races, because if you go into something like Zagama, it's going to be at least 10 days before you can do any serious training, and so they have to try and think about maintaining that race through the season, but also ensuring they've got enough energy that they can peak in the final, because we've seen time and time again with Remy Bonnet arriving at the final 2 years ago, undefeated in so many races, unable to perform. And you have to choose where you deploy your speed.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, you could argue that Bonnet 2 years ago, he knew he didn't need to win the series. He just had to finish top 9, which for him was fairly easily done. There you see the standings in the men. Kiriago leading Atayu in second, Machoka in third, ahead of
ahead of Remy at this stage. Remy is clearly dropping off the pace, given they've just come over a climb. But Cesare, a local runner, he is sat in 11th overall in the series. A good result here today, given that 3 of our top 4 athletes, it's their first race of the season, and so could see Cesare up into the top 3, possibly the top 5 overall. Really good point scoring for him today.
Yeah, series leader mean too much at this stage of the season. Patrick Kimagino is not here. He leads with a maximum of 400 points. Philemon Kiriago in second place, 376. So he's likely to be the leader at the end of today. On the women's side, Sara Alonso of Spain, who won in Kobe, she's not racing. And so is going to lose, almost certainly going to lose her lead to Madeleine Florea of Romania, who is up front in the women's field at the moment. Still got Philaris Kisang in third place. Is that Joyce and Giro?
This looks like Valentine Rutte to me, and there are some significant gaps now, it looks, between the ladies, and this will start to change how they're feeling about their mental damage that will do. And that's one of the things we have to wonder about. Cesare Maestri currently in 5th place. How far behind does he think he is, and does he know that more tightly together? Because that will actually change how his emotions and how he's feeling, because he'll be hoping that of those front 4, someone's going to burn out, someone's going to be spat out of the back, and you know, it wouldn't surprise me if he could claw it back to get a podium.
Yeah, Maestri, of course, Italian, so he'll be getting a huge amount of support here. He's actually a new. This is Ruto, first and third in the women's tour, sandwiched in between them, unless Madalena Florea is sitting in second. She may still be holding on to the lead as they go down that downhill section.
He keeps on looking back. Philemon keeps on looking back. So all four ties together. Fascinating to see this play out. And Cesare Maestri also on the road section. This means he's very close behind. This I ran this yesterday. He'll be turning with only 150 meters or so, I think. So he is a lot closer than
generally we see a lot of drone footage, particularly, you know, Headlands, Mammoth, we saw a lot of drone footage last year, but it's just not possible in this sort of terrain because they're in amongst the trees for most of the run.
In all of the cameras, so if you do fall, it's gonna be on social media around the world within minutes.
Yeah, Cesare Maestri looking very, very comfortable at the moment. Madalena Florea, the winner, remember 2 years ago, she's been going really well. We've just lost the live footage for a second.
I've just had an update from the field. Joyce Njiri sadly has pulled out of today's race. It's the second race in a row. I know she's really been struggling with her nutrition, and it seems that it's a similar thing has happened today. Really sad to see that we won't be seeing Joyce finish the race today.
From all the athletes down this steep section, they make it look so easy, both the going up and the going down. It really is a sport that requires so many skills. You need the sort of aerobic capacity of a top cross-country skier. You need the downhill skills of a mountain biker. The you know, the sort of the agility, I guess, of a break dancer, just the ability to move your feet fast and accurate, and then of course the stamina of someone who's used to doing something like the Tour de France. Everything is in there. In terms of the Olympic I can think of a lot who would happily sacrifice one of the events in the athletic, put the trail in instead.
Trail race, we know she's incredibly fast, a 15:40. 5K.
Last year, sitting in fourth, but he will be panicking. This is what he's done times before. And then Cesare Maestri of Italy in fifth place. We still don't have an exact time between. David, maybe you can give us an indication of how far Maestri is behind.
To the town, they'll get the huge energy from the zone. They'll also be given the updates on what's happening behind them, which will be critical for Cesare to understand if he's got a chance of reeling them in. They may take on some nutrition, but then they've got 2 kilometers of climbing before they're back in for the finish of this race. So it is going to be an incredibly fast lap that I suspect will be sub 6 minutes. So when they hit that final checkpoint, they know they've got about 6 minutes of maximum effort left.
Yeah. And this is a really steep section on the left of your screen. When they drop below 7 kilometers an hour, you know it's hard. And same 4 men. Haven't seen too much of a change in the lead. Everyone's fairly comfortable. Maybe Kiriak.
Some people, but they're going to try and attack early. They attack late. They remember the exact route coming through the town, because there is that tight turn into the riverbed, and you actually have to jump out almost to a side street. Very confusing at pace. Calling the shots, and they will be working together. But significantly there, Edison is not in fourth anymore. He's now on the shoulder of Philemon Kiriego. It may mean that our runner at the back is feeling a little bit more tired, or it might be that he's positioning himself to always be behind Philemon, just to guard in case Philemon tries to break. But we're coming up now to the almost the peak of our final climb in lap 4 before they go down around 240 meters of very fast descent into the town.
Just a very, very slight gap. I think Alassane Alazoui just conscious that he doesn't want a break to happen at the front of that group, so he's just edged his way up into third place. Madalena Fleury still leading the women's 20.2 completed the 26.5, so she's essentially got 6.5k to go. We're looking at what, 25 minutes maybe of racing. The winning time here for the women by Madalena Fleury was 2 hours 18:05. So by that reckoning, we're under half an hour to go.
Yeah, and she'll be feeling fantastic right now. She said in the press conference yesterday that returning to Noli, this is the location that really launched her career. It's winning here that allowed her to be a professional, and so many times during this series since then, she's struggled her mental focus. And the pressure has got to her. We saw tears. And I think being on the question mark she's had in previous races, and she's
the race up and down the Great Wall of China were brutally hard running on those steps. So she's got good points. She's obviously in fantastic form, and a win here I think would really accelerate her season.
And we talk about the length of the season. This for me was almost her last opportunity to try and assert some dominance. She didn't get a top two in those first two races, but the opportunity series. So it's looking that at the moment like she's in a very good position to do that. We're still waiting for split times to understand where Philarice Kisang in second place is and how close this race to the line will be in our ladies.
Up and up she goes, but she will know now that she's approaching that 5 kilometer. Go back. Just a little bit concerned. And there is Kisang on the right of your screen. Is there any sign of Fleury in front? There's a good at least 40 meters between them.
And the fact that Philarice has caught Madalena 3 times, is it, so far in this race on those climbs, there will be a little bit of expectation that it will happen again. And I'm surprised quite how much Madalena has been looking back over her shoulder, because you lose a little bit of momentum with a slight turn of the head, particularly because it's not even on the corners that she's looking back. She's having to change her whole body to get a glimpse of what's down the trail. And if you add all...
That's a... Yeah, it's only a small trip, but that's 4 or 5 seconds that could make a difference at the end of the day. There is a white vest around ahead, and I'm pretty sure it's got a blonde-headed athlete. There she is. It's not a match. Fleury Kisang, Ruto in third. We've got Flanillo of Spain in 4, and then Vivian Bonzi in 5. As David pointed out, the winner of last year's tour dropping out. Very sad to see Njiro go again, as she did in China. But what a race we've got developing here.
And as we mentioned, Joy struggling with getting her nutrition right, and on days like she first came to the Golden Trail, performed in with Sierras, and now she was leading that race for quite a long time, until about the 20k. To take on more and more nutrition. It seems like today she's actually got that right, because she was slowing down significantly at this stage in the race 2 years ago. It allowed Judith Wheeler to almost catch her. But we're now back with our men's, and there are some gaps.
Now, who's that in front? Is that Philemon Kiriakou in front with Elisine Alazoui in second? We're down to 3, I think, with the leading group of men, having had 4 for the first 20 kilometers. And as they approach the last 4K, the speed is picking up. 21.3 kilometers an hour. They were down to 4 on the last climb, so they've still got the lightness in the legs to hit those high speeds. Kiriakou there in the light yellow vest, being stalked by Alazoui. A mistake, I think, from both of them, but very, very quick adjustment from Kiriakou to get back on track.
Gap, but this time again, but
name is Rémi Bonnet. I come from Switzerland and I run for Salomon and Red Bull.
And we are off for the final.
I remember my first flower format was in Nolin 2023 and it was for the final of the Golden Juice.
Today we have 4 big loops.
The flower format is like a flower. You go up the mountain, down to the finish and the start, and you do it like many times, like maybe 4 or 5 times. It's really like short uphill, like I think the longest is 400 meters of climbing, so it's not much. Like you are more used to do like 1,000 meters of climbing, so it's like really nervous races and you have to be really strong to win the race there.
Rémi Bonnet, last year's champion. You can see he's won 3 victories here. He's an incredible climber. He does have good flat speed.
I think it's good for the television. Like it's easier to film. Like also for the fans, like they can see us like many times. Like if you compare to another race, like maybe you can see us 1 or twice during the race. And with the flower format, you can see us like 8 times maybe. But we will see about the future what brings. But I cannot say that it will be forever or not.
I think this is the 3rd place in the men's, which might suggest that Philemon Kiriago now he's gone the right way. There are 2 leaders. Are these not our leaders? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're down to 2.
Talk about Elisine like we talk about Elisine liking to be on the shoulder, as he is here, and they've just come past. Paul Machoka was around 20 seconds down, maybe 15 seconds down. They've now dropped Richard Atuya. It's the top 3 are clearly making space between them, but it is absolutely neck and neck as they go into that final lap.
Yeah, and a reminder that the final 2 years ago, won by Elisine Alazoui in 1:56.15. He was just 15 seconds ahead of the man who is just ahead of him at the moment, Philemon Kiriago. So these 2 have done it all before, and Kiriago is digging deep. He's got, what, 3-4 meters advantage. Maestri there, back in 5th or 6th.
3 runners all together, 4th, 5th and 6th place, incredibly close. If our 3rd place runner makes a mistake, they will lose that podium.
These are the 2 who will be battling it out for 1st and 2nd unless something goes wrong on this last loop. Kiriago leading, Alazoui of Morocco in 2nd place, where he likes to be.
We've seen this time and time before.
Yeah, and this is where, you know, Kiriago, he must have spent a lot of time lying awake at night, David, thinking, how am I going to beat this man? Well, now is his opportunity to show that it is possible. Or do you think he's just going to say, okay, I have to settle for 2nd?
He was already behind at this stage 2 years ago, so that will give him confidence. The fact that Elisine has not made his move yet, but previously it's when he was in Headlands, it was actually the positioning coming into the final turn that really made the difference. And we even saw in Mammoth Lakes when it was a sprint finish between Elisine Alazoui and Patrick Kipingino. Again, it was the timing of that sprint finish. So when they come into the town, there is a longer straight before they turn into that riverbed. And if Philemon is wanting to avoid a sprint finish, that is the opportunity for him to really try and stretch out. So they're going to stick together up these steps. It's steppy on the way down as well, and so I don't think they're going to break until they get a little bit more space, or Elisine will try and use the technicality to break at that stage. So still all to play for in these top 2, and I'd say still all to play for for our third place podium as well.
1.9 kilometers to go to the finish. Let's say an average of what, 3.5 minutes with this sort of terrain. So we're looking at 6-7 minutes to the finish of this run. The winning time 2 years ago, 1:56.15. They're not quite going to match that, but still a fantastic effort from the two leaders, Kiriago and of course Alazawi. They've wound down the others.
And the conditions are significantly harder with the humidity today, but also last year was, 2 years ago was the final where they'd had a month rest leading up to it, peaking at the end of the season. So it's no surprise really that today is slower, but especially as I feel these two have come into it with their eyes open, and it's more of a chess game. The first 2/3 of this race, not spending too much energy. But will we see a move here as they come into the town? This is the final descent into our town section. We're hoping the camera runners can keep up with them, but we're also here with it's saying,
yeah,
first and second ladies together.
Yeah, yes, Filaris Kisang has gone ahead, and wow, this is a fantastic situation. Is there a downhill opportunity between here and the finish for Madalena Florea to sort of exert her authority, or is she going to have to find some flat speed in the closing stages?
It's a good question, and the fact that Filaris is with Madalena at this stage, to me, suggests that Madalena's advantage, and is that Elisine moving ahead slightly. Elisine now in the lead, just by a meter or two. Fascinating. So, for the first time, Elisine is leading, but it doesn't look like he's made his move. It's almost as if Philemon is saying, come on then, you do the work. And I think we've never seen this before in the Golden Trail. Philemon content to let Elisine lead and just sitting behind. And I wonder what Elisine will be thinking about that.
Well, we've got to wait and see whether he can actually stay in there. The two leading women change places again. That must be a dozen times that these two have traded first and second. Again, Madalena Florea just looks over the shoulder to see if it's one of the men coming up behind her. No, it's not. It is still Filaris Kisang, who's looking very strong at this stage. And now we're virtually into a sprint. We've still got over 1 kilometre to go. It's a fascinating finish, as we had 2 years ago, as we had in just about every one of the Global Trail World Series races last year. But Alazawi is there, he's out in front, he was the Tour winner last year, and is that a 2-3 metre gap opening up?
And Filaris back in front again. So our expectation that this would be where Madalena Florea would stretch her legs. It hasn't been happening. It's looking like they're equally matched over the terrain. We saw earlier in the race with those steps that it was
changing the lead,
prepared to hike. And
changing the lead in the men's. Philemon Kiriago has gone ahead of... oh, there's that little cheeky move. Oh my goodness, and he's got a lead of 10 metres on the steps. That was very, very clever. He had about a metre to play with, and Alazawi is away. The Moroccan has got that 5-10 metre lead that he wanted, and Philemon Kiriago's going to have to dig very deep from here. Hopefully he knows the course perfectly. No, he hasn't learnt it, but they trade again. Oh, and again Alazawi finds his way, fights his way to the front, and he's going to hit the bottom of the town with another 10 metres to spare. Drama at its best.
It's exactly the same point where Judith took the wrong turn before. Like, why was this not learned in advance? But it's going to be very hard now for Philemon to catch up. There is a right-hand turning coming into that riverbed. But look, Philemon now. Philemon's got the pace over Elisine. He's looking fluid. Who has got energy left?
Philemon Kiriago, he steps up the pace again. This is the biggest test that El Azoui of Morocco has had for what? The last 5 Global Tour races. There's a gap now of 10 metres, the grimace on the face of the Moroccan. And Philemon Kiriago storming away here. Those strides a good 6 inches longer than El Azoui's, and this could be it. Into the final straight, up the riverbed for the last time, and from 10 metres to 15. I think El Azoui may well be beaten this time. The Kenyan is away and clear. Brilliant response. It was a clever move from the Moroccan on the way down the steps, but he just hasn't had the speed over the last 400 metres.
Incredible to see. Philemon didn't mind El Azoui overtaking. He was matching him stride for stride, content even when El Azoui made his move. He knew the course well enough to be able to deploy his speed, and he's clearly just been using his runners throughout this race and he's just coming around the corner to me now, absolutely sprinting into the line. He hasn't won a Golden Trail race since his debut in Sierra Zinal 2 years ago. He's come second 3, 4 times in a row, but today is his day. He paced to perfection. He waited until the end.
The smile of a champion. At last, Kiriago has done it. He was second in Headlands last year. He was second in Sierra Zinal. He's had a couple of good races this year, but he hasn't been able to beat Kipincheno. This time, he has beaten lastly as champion. El Azoui has to settle for runners-up pace. The navigation down that last section of steps could well have cost the Moroccan, but to be fair, they both made mistakes. And even if he hadn't, I think the Kenyan was so much fleeter of foot over that last 400-500 metres. And what a race for Paul Machoka. He hasn't really featured on the footage for the last half hour or so, but he played his part, and he has secured a podium finish here in Nolly in the 3rd round of the Global Trail World Series.
And there's a sprint for 4th place. A sprint at the moment between Cesare Maestro and I think it's Richard Atuya coming through. They are neck and neck going round this final turn. Wow, what a time. Oh! And knowing the course,
yeah.
Cesare Maestro.
Well, David, if there's one lesson, learn the last kilometre of the course like the back of your hand. You have to know every twist and turn. You have to know every opportunity where you might get ahead or where someone else might attack. I think the leading 4 all demonstrated that they didn't know it well enough.
The question now, though, is will our ladies know the final turns as well? When they came past me earlier, they were locked together, but Madalena Faria now at the front, even though it's a climb. This is the moment we thought if Filaris was going to make her mark, it would be up these steps. Could it be the power hiking now is playing into the advantage of Madalena Faria, leading again with clear distance, we think?
But Floria looking tired. You certainly cannot write off Filaris Kisang, but she's come back so many times. These 2 trading places again and again and again. There is Kisang. How far behind is she? I think it's still only 40 metres or so, maybe a little bit more. This is her last chance. Kisang has to be level with Floria at the top of this climb.
And it looks so painful, doesn't it? So hard doing these steps when you're this exhausted into the race. What have they got left for this finish line?
Two podium finishes already this season for Madalena Faria. She's going to get another one here without doubt, but will she take the win and the 200 points that come with it? 1.8 kilometers still to go. we certainly can't jump to any conclusion at this stage. But
we saw
the next what?
We saw how the...
Just going to say, that's the last bit of climbing completed, which must be good news for the Romanian.
The fact that men have already gone through these tight turns, you suspect the audience and the public will be at the corners, cheering people through, directing them as to where they need to go. But she has raced here before. She should know these turns going into town quite well. But she did say in the press conference that when she looked at the course again this week, there are huge sections of it she just didn't remember at all because she was so focused on racing. You just don't take on board the minutiae of these turns. But this is where Filiris needs to get on her shoulder because it's the pressure that will cause her to make mistakes. If she is running, feeling more relaxed, she'll be able to take her time on those turns and is less likely to go the wrong way.
Yeah, last chance, little bit of uphill. Filiris Kasang still carrying that water, slightly heavier footed than she was at the start of the race. I've thought a couple of times actually, David, that she might have injured that left ankle because she just doesn't seem to be comfortable on the left ankle in particular, and that has given Madalena Fleury the opportunity to pull away, and she's into cruise mode now as she heads down to the town of Nolly and her first victory of the season.
And I think you might be right that the fact the gap opened up so dramatically at the beginning of this final lap, it could be that Filiris turned an ankle or something to allow Madalena to pull away, but she was looking sublime down those trails, and we talk about how painful it must be at this stage of the race. If you've been pounding your legs already on the downhills, it's so hard to brake on these turns because your quads are completely trashed.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I've got a slightly frozen picture. I think that's what Kasang needs for Fleury to freeze in time if she's going to have a chance. 25.2 completed, and so they're coming up to the 1 kilometre mark, 1.1 still to go, and at these sort of speeds it is not going to take them much more than 2 minutes 55, maybe 3:05 at the pace they're knocking out at the moment.
And we saw earlier Filiris was looking over her shoulder, Filiris Kasang. There are male athletes behind her, but she clearly is now concerned about third place as much as she is about first place. That can happen when you feel like the lead has stretched away from you. You no longer focus on what could be ahead. And again, she's turning round. She's clearly now more concerned with keeping her second place than she is on catching Madalena Fleury, maybe given up on that first place position.
Yeah, those were the steps where Alazoui made his bid for glory. It didn't pay off in the end, but it was a fantastic race in the men's, and the women's every bit as good today. The group broke up a little bit earlier, but a ding-dong battle between Fleury and Kasang all the way through these 26k. 800 metres now to go for Fleury to secure that 200 points and put it to the top of the GTWS series table after 3 races. Long way to go as we go through the summer. Next race is next weekend, and then there's a gap, 22nd of June for the Broken Arrow Sky Race, and then the TP Trail in Mexico on the 29th of June.
I was stupid at that moment, but I've come to realize what I
As she turns on this corner, she'll look back, and that's when she'll know she's won today's race. The fact that it's such a long straight will allow her to see that Kasang is nowhere near her. So she'll be able to relax coming into the final, knowing that for the first time in 2 years, she has won.
But did you doubt at one point?
for sure.
Well, she's still moving remarkably well when you consider what she's been through. And for Madalena Florea, Nolly, and this race in particular have always been very, very special to her. And it's that those feelings are going to be multiplied by a factor of 10 after today's victory.
I'm a strong man like him.
And look at that gap now. She clearly has changed gear. Even, as you say, Filleries maybe has hurt an ankle, but the fact that there's at least 50 meters between them in that last 2 kilometers, maybe more, just shows how well Madalena Florea has paced this. To be able to open up such speed on that last lap is truly impressive.
Now, you'll remember well, David, when she came across the line to win the grand final 2 years ago, she collapsed in tears just half a pace after she broke the tape. I don't think we're going to see that sort of emotion today, but this is a really good indication of the form that the Romanian runner is in.
And today's race really, to me, puts to bed a lot of the demons she's had over these last 18 months. She has struggled with nutrition, she's struggled with pressure, and to a certain extent, she's not known how to go out. She at the end of last season, overtrained, she was ill, she didn't know how to shake it. And in fact, she's just ran past me, and she's finishing with Leonard there, a Romanian runner, the 2 Romanian runners who know each other incredibly well. She held out her hands. This is beautiful to see.
Well, instead of the tears, we've got the smiles. We've got the smiles. There is plenty of emotion there. And the tape is ready. Madalena Florea has had an absolutely epic battle today. I think she's going to have a sore neck tomorrow because she spent half her time looking over her shoulder to see where Filleries Kisang was. She did not need to do that. She's done it again. She breaks the tape in Nolly for the 2nd time in 2 years as the champion here. And here's the woman who gave her that battle, Filleries Kisang. Relatively unknown compared to many of the runners here. I think she's missed the finish straight. Another little navigation error. It doesn't make any difference to the result, but that was one sensational trail race.
And what a race for Filleries, especially because we've seen her time and time again go out climbing extremely well and just unable to maintain that pace to the finish. But today, you know, a 2nd place in the Golden Trail is a real performance. She's traditionally done well at races like Sierra's and now that are far less technical, where there's more climbing than there is descent. But today's race was technical, it was up and down, it was 26k longer than she often runs, and so it's a real all-round performance. And talking about good performance, Valentine Ruto, we don't know much about her other than her track speed because she's been racing so infrequently. I don't even know if she's run trail in Europe before. This is the first time on the Golden Trail, and to come in 3rd already shows the promise that she has for future runners, future races, especially if she's training alongside Joyce Njuru. She's going to learn so much, so I expect to see her a lot more in years to come.
Valentine Ruto into the last couple of 100 meters. Vivian Bonzi was in 4th last time we saw. Alice Gaggi of Italy back down in 7th place at the moment. Joyce Njiro having to pull out for the 2nd race in succession. That was a big disappointment, and certainly it's going to put a big dent in her chances of retaining the title she won last year. But a fascinating race, really made by the 2 leaders. But what do you make of Valentine Ruto's performance?
Really, really good when you if you looked at her running down hills, she really was struggling, and there were times where she'd slowed down significantly compared to the front two runners. And so there's a lot of opportunities for her to improve on this performance. Clearly a very good climber. Even now, she looks very fluid for the end of a race. And so it's that experience over a course like this that she hasn't got. And because she's now moved to Italy to train, she's going to be able to run a lot more downhills to increase her skill level. So the fact she's got that base already, it wouldn't surprise me even by the end of the season we see very different performances from her.
So Ruto completing the top three in the women's. And the Italians happy with the way things have gone. This is Vivian Bonzi coming in fourth place.
This is Rosa Lara coming in from Spain. She's ran very well. There we go, Rosa Lara Falui. She ran incredibly well in the first half of last season. Had a few mistakes in our final, but a fourth place here is very good from her, and reminds us how good she is over technical terrain.
Yeah, missing out on the podium this time round, but an encouraging performance nonetheless. It's Madalena Florea who wins the women's event, Hela Filaris Kisang of Kenya, and then Valentine Ruto making up the top three. In the men's, Philemon Kiriago finding a way. He's got the win. He's now got the lead in the series, and he's found a way to get past Elassine Alazawi of Morocco, who's been a bit of a thorn in his side over the years, but it's Kiriago who takes the lead and the 200 points.
For you.
I want to say it's a holiday mode, but no, I need to continue the series.
And we have the audio of some of our finishes at the moment. There's a chance we might be cutting to some interviews for you to see, but you can see how much this means to her. Fourth place on the Golden Trail. Her best performance today, a really, really solid race from Rosa Lara Falea, the Spanish runner. But we talk about Joyce Njiri not finishing today. If we think back to this time last year, at this stage in the series, she'd won in China, but actually it wasn't until the end of the season when she headed to America, winning in Headlands, winning in Mammoth Lakes, that she really started to assert her dominance. So the fact that after 3 races, she hasn't given us the performance we expected to see, I don't think means it's game over for her quite yet. She's going to struggle to go into our final with enough points to potentially win the overall. But given that we've had 3 different winners in 3 races, and we saw a similar situation last year where the points were really spread amongst our ladies until the last 2 races of the season, there's plenty of opportunities for her to score big still to come.
Yeah, and worth mentioning, David, that when it comes to the grand final, they have a prologue that's worth 100 points, and then the actual race itself is worth 300 points. So a real opportunity for someone who's just off the mark, just off that top spot to overtake. And it keeps the suspense going. And just a reminder, 8 races before the final, 3 count, and then you have to do the final to get a ranking in the Tour Series. And that's absolutely the way it should be. Would you like it that they had a system that meant the top runners turned up to every race, or do you think that's asking too much?
I mean, it would be so brutal on our athletes, and even peaking 2 weeks apart can be tricky. So 8 races in a season is a huge amount of time, especially as we tend to say that each mile you race takes a day to recover from for most athletes. So a day like today, 14 days before you can race again. But here
let's have a chat with the men's winner.
Everything was using the technique. On the last part. Yesterday I said that I was stupid that moment, but I've come to realize what I can do. I was waiting as she was waiting to determine who is stronger. But I trust myself that the finishing line determines. I was waiting to the finish and I managed.
I will re-ask the first question. First question. Philemon, what an amazing race today. You have led all the race long and finally you won, but did you doubt at one point?
For sure, this year it's a different year than last year. I was focusing this year to land podium side or on the top of the podium side. This race was very hard race from the beginning. We were strong Kenyans, also European very received, but I encouraged myself that I'm a strong man like them to the finishing line.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
David, I would say strong in body and strong in mind, because that was a mental battle as much as anything else. And Philemon Kiriakou saying he was waiting just as Alazoui was waiting. He knew what the Moroccan was going to do, and he was ready for it this time round.
Brava, l'anno scorso nona posizione, più o meno siamo su quelle tempistiche. La nostra Alice Gaggi, che è un'atleta infinita, difende i colori anche lei del team Brooks, è sempre sorridente e positiva, l'abbiamo vista entusiasta ieri.
Well, I hope we're going to get a chat with Madalena Florea, the winner of the women's race. Came in ahead of Philaris Kisang. She may well have doubted herself at some stage, but on the same stage that made her name 2 years ago, Madalena Florea has done it again and taken top spot in the women's. Here she is, today's champion.
Today, what a beautiful race. You won your first race of the Golden Trail Series this year. It's amazing to see you back on the first position. How do you feel right now?
First, I want to thank you for my family, for all Romanian, for everyone that is supporting me. I'm very, very, very happy. I don't have one word to express what I feel. Looks like knowledge is for me, because since 2023 I was not have any victory, and I come back here to open this barrier for the victory.
You seem to be very strong today, and you were controlling all the race long, but suddenly something happened.
During the race, I don't know what was happened. I was feel pain on the belly. You know, sometimes the woman have few days per month when don't feel good. This I am today, and I was want to control because I was feel energy, but something was disturbing me. But I was managing until the end, and the final was great for me.
And where did you find the strength to get back?
Mentally, I think here, since I was arrived, I was feel energy the same like kids, and I was want to enjoy all the time.
So what is the next step now for you?
I want to say you it's a holiday mode, but no, I need to continue the series, and I can't wait to come back at home to celebrate with all the people what is around me.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
ringraziamo per la bellissima energia che ci avete dato. Fatevi una scampanellata a voi perché siete stati straordinari, a dir poco straordinari. Quindi è stato un arrivo concitatissimo, come non succede spesso nelle gare di trail, anzi quasi mai, ne abbiamo viste diverse. È stato bellissimo, siamo una sfida femminile ma sono stati accolti da un boato. Quindi noi procediamo tra poco, lasciamo sempre il nostro parterre libero perché ricordiamo che siamo in diretta praticamente in mezzo mondo, quindi lasciamo giustamente spazio alle dirette di Golden Trail World Series e agli atleti che sono ovviamente occupati nella mix zone adesso, ma poi noi cercheremo di partire qualche battuta dai nostri atleti nel momento in cui saranno qui per la flower ceremony. Intanto vediamo quello che ci regala la grafica, l'arrivo al femminile, Maddalena Florea, Hilary Skizan, Valentin Lutto, il nostro podio e via via le nostre ragazze della top 10, e invece il trionfatore maschile Filimon Omobongo, Kiriago, Elusine Nasawi, Paul Maciotta, il straordinario Cesare Maestri e signori giù il cappello, well done and welcome to the finish line also from the United States of America. E allora, ciao Richard Attuia, Michael Senello, Pierre Galgurden.
So there you see the standings in the men's. Philemon Kiriago, absolutely sensational performance, just over the hour for the 26k, 2:01:47. Won, what was it, 1:56 last year, won by Elusine Alazoui, who's second today, just 18 seconds behind. Paul Machoka, great effort from him. He was in that group of four for so long. And then Cesare Maestri of Italy keeping the locals happy with a tremendous performance. Only 1:23 off the leaders. And Attuia in the end dropping down into fifth, but just getting the better of Michael Seoli. Kevin Kibet, top 10. Remy Benet not having the best of times today. And actually he dropped back quite early on.
But what a race it was today. Our ladies led us out 10 minutes ahead of the men, and already at the start, if you recall, there were some mistakes made in the navigation, which seemed to be a theme throughout the race today. So many little errors catching people out and losing them second. And the men started 10 minutes behind them. A ferocious pace from both of them. The real surprise here, though, was it wasn't Filimon Kiriago or Elusine leading out the men's, and similarly in the ladies, it wasn't our series champion Joyce Njiru or even Maddalena Florea leading out the ladies. It was Filaris Kisang at the top of lap 2. This is where our group of 4 men started to form, and they would stay together for the vast majority of the course. In the climbs, in the ladies, we're seeing Filaris Kisang really stretching out, and the story of today's race was set. Maddalena Florea catching up on the downhills. But it wasn't just the two of them that had their way. Newcomer Valentina Ruto also amongst the ladies, 3 of them together. But coming into our second lap, towards the end of it, our men were now a 4, trading blows down the more technical terrain. At the halfway stage, when the men were catching the women, it was very hard to know who had the opportunity to really take the lead. Still climbing as one. The real surprise was that Remy Benet was no longer leading the chasing group, clearly struggling with form early in the season. Within the men, Elusine again, happy to sit back behind. And the question was, who was going to make the move? And would there be a significant distance between the top 2 by the finish? Maddalena Florea, though, stretching not just on the climbs, just on the downs, but also on the climbs. And Filaris Kisang struggling a little bit, it seemed. But coming into the final lap, that's when the race erupted. Filimon Kiriago leading the charge And for a change, it was Elisine who actually made the break. Coming into the town, some mistakes. But as soon as Philemon Kiriago had space, he pushed the button, winning for the first time in 2 years. Absolutely delighted. 4 second places in a row, but there was no doubt beating Elisine for the first time in his life, getting the tactics spot on. Will this be a rivalry that will play itself out time and time again this season? Elisine Alazoui having to settle for second place, and in third place, a great performance there by Paul Machoka. Madalena Fleury on that last lap absolutely flew up and down the course. There was nothing in it at that finish line, allowing her to really take on board the significance of this win. Her first win in the Golden Trail in 2 years. An incredible performance, pacing to perfection all the way to the line.
So the bubbly is out. Just what they need after a hard day's work. And really looking forward to the next race in the series. It's Zegama next weekend, 25th of May, for the Spanish Spectacular. And then we head to the USA in June, just over a month to recover from their 2-week effort here in Europe. USA and Mexico, and then back to Europe in August with the Pitts Alpine Glacier Trail, and then Sierra Zinal on the 9th of August, and that will be the last of the 8 races before the grand final, and the top 30 will all qualify for the race in Valle dell'Edro in Italy, the Garda region being chosen for the grand finale this year. That is a sensational part of the world. Doesn't matter what your sport, climbing, mountain biking, paragliding, sailing, it has it all. So we will be back in Italy in October. Well, let's leave you with a few pictures of Nolly, which has done a tremendous job yet again hosting this race. There are your rankings. Philemon Kiriago going to the top of the standings. 2 second places and a win takes him on the 576. Bogdan Damian, who got on the podium for the first time in the first race of the year in Kobe, 4:21. Some way behind, Patrick Kimijano, who won both races in Japan and China, sitting in third place in the men's. In the women's, today's winner, Madalena Fleury, goes to the top of the standings. 564 points her total, ahead of Sarah Alonso, who won in Kobe, and Takaku Takamura. Consistency putting her into the top 3. Well, just a reminder before we go, we will be back with the Global Trail World Series next weekend, 25th of May, Zegama. Never do we get more fans, more passionate, more noise than on the climbs of Zegama. Do not miss it. The Spanish will no doubt give it every little bit of respect. We wait and see who will enter and who will win. Hope you join us next week for the next round. It will be round 4 of the Global Trail World Series.